Hello there! Let's now render some nice error pages to our users. And so to start, let's actually create an error first. So let's open this tour here. No, I don't want to translate. And now let's simply add something to the slug here. And so that will then, of course, not be found. Right? And so this is what an error looks like at this point. So simply all of this JSON here, just like it would look like in Postman. So we've seen this kind of error here before, and so let's now fix that. But first, we actually need to fix this particular error. So right now we get cannot read property name of null in get tour. Okay, and so that is here in our views controller, get tour. And so in here, we do not have any error handling in case that there is no tour, right? So we have that in all our other route handlers, but in this, we don't have it yet. So let's add that. So if there is no tour, then return and go to the next middleware with a new app error. And probably that's not here yet. And no, indeed, it's not. So const app error equals all right, error here, of course. And then let's say there is no tour with that name. And then it's a 404 for not found. Okay, so let's try that again. And so now we should get a much nicer error. And indeed, we get one. So 404. And keep in mind that this one is now an operational error. So an error that we know that we created ourselves, basically. And so just like before, that's going to be important for our error handling strategy. So let's actually talk about that. And so here we're done. And now in our error controller, we have, remember, two functions which send errors back to the client. So we have this one here for development and this one for production. Then in production, we distinguish between operational errors and other unknown errors, right? And so that's actually what we just talked about before. So for the errors that we know, we send back the real error message because we can be sure that it's not going to be some weird looking error coming somewhere from Express or Node or something like that. While on the other hand, when it is an unknown error, well, then we do not want to leak the error details. And so now in this case, with the rendered website, we will actually use the same strategy. Now, what I'm going to do is to simply add the rendering of an error page to each of these functions. And basically what I'm going to do is to test if the URL starts with /API. And so in that case, we send this kind of error, right? But if the URL does not start with API, well, in that case, it means that we want to render an error page as a rendered website, okay? So just like we've been doing in this section. Anyway, let's now implement that. And so we can use request.originalURL. And probably we have used that before. All right, so original URL is basically the entire URL, but not with the host. So it looks then exactly like the route. And so again, when we're hitting our URL, well, then that route starts with /API. And so now we can test for that. So we can use a JavaScript function called startsWith. So a function that's available for strings. And then test if it starts with /API. Right? And so if it does, then this is what we want to do. So simply send down the error as JSON. But if not, well, then we actually want to render an error. So it's still res.status and the status code as well. And then here, it is actually render. Then we need the name of the template, and we're going to create this template in a second, but it's going to be called error. And then the data that we want to send there is for now just the title. And I will add some more stuff then once the template is actually done. So something went wrong is going to be the title of this error page. All right. Oh, actually, we do not have access to the request variable here in this function. And so let's add that. Request here. And we're also going to be needing it here in this one. And so let's add that here as well. So right here. Okay. So now we actually need to create this page or this template called error. And once more, I already have a simple template for that. So it's in dev data, template, and error template. Okay. So let's copy this and then create a view for that error.pug. Okay. And so here we have a simple h2 which says, uh-oh, something went wrong. Then some fun emojis there. Well, they're not really fun. And then here we want to be able to also pass in a message. All right. So let's set this equal to MSG, just shorthand for message. All right. And that's actually it. So let's close that. And let's pass in that message. So MSG is then set, and let's really set it to error.message. Okay, and we're doing that here because we are in development. So keep that in mind. Let's also add some comments here. API. Let's put that here. The rendered website. So we're doing it like this with error message. Again, because in development, it doesn't really matter if we leak all of the error details to our page, right? Because no one is really going to see it since, we're in development. So that should be working now. So all we should need to do now is to reload this page. But now something is wrong here. So it says it didn't send any data. So let's go back here. Well, as a first problem, I'm seeing here that it should have the status code and not just the status. Let's also check if we got some error here. Oh yeah, actually there is errors. So yeah, it actually was the invalid status code. So here it should be code. Let's give that another save. Reload it. And now we get some error page here. Well, it's not really formatted, but still it has the title. And more importantly, it has this a message that we just passed in. So there is no tour with that name. And so that comes exactly from our views controller. So right from here. So remember that logic where we create an error here, which is then passed down to our global error handling middleware. Right? And so that's the one that will pick up these errors and send them down to the client. Now, in our case, we got this error because in our here in our template, we still forgot to do something, which is simply to extend, of course, our main template, right? So we need to say extends the base template, and then, as always, create that block here. So block, content, and then all of this needs to be in there. And so basically here we're doing the exact same thing as we did in all the other templates. So basically injecting this content here into the content block in the base template. So if we reload that now, then it finally looks as intended. All right. And now if we actually did have some error in our code, and so let's again say that we do not have this error handling here, then of course the entire error is leaked to the client. So cannot read property name of null. And of course, we do not want our website visitors to get this kind of error, right? No one would really understand what that means. And so in our production error handler, let's now take care of that. So down here in our error controller, now let's apply the same logic that we have here. So testing if we are currently handling the API or not. And of course, there could be more elegant ways of doing this. For example, you could have one completely separate error handling middleware just for the API and one for the rendered website, right? But again, I just want to keep it kind of simple here. Okay, so in this case, that's really my main goal. All right, let's select all of this. Oh, what happened there? Here we go. Okay, so that's for the API. And now we will actually have something very similar. So this one is again for the rendered website. Let's call it B here and A for this one. So just to separate it a bit better. So we have A and then B down here. Anyway, this will look a bit similar to this one. And so if we have an operational error, then basically the error page should look just like we had here before. But in case that it's a programming or unknown error, well, then we do not want the complete message, but instead just a very generic message. So something like, please try again later. All right. Now let's see what kind of error we get here. And apparently we get something called a lonely if statement here, right? So ESLint doesn't really want us to only have an if inside of an else block. And I agree that it's kind of not a beautiful coding practice. And so in fact, let's fix that by getting rid of this else here. Give it a save, and then that error is gone. But now we need to make sure that this here really ends the request response cycle. And so we need to return here and here as well. All right. Now another ESLint error, unnecessary else after a return. And indeed, that is true as well. And I have been actually following this rule throughout the course because I like it myself as a coding practice. And so, yeah, let's get rid of this else here then. I really believe, and I have believed it for a long time, that it looks a lot nicer without these if-else statements, but instead only with an if like this here, and then basically the else outside of that. Okay, and that's what we have here now. Let's also put A and B here. B, and in fact, let's do the exact same thing here. So return this one as well. Then here, A and B as well. So that in fact looks cleaner to me. Now we have A here and A here again, but well, never mind at this point. All right. So return here, and before it yells at me, let's remove this. And so that is better again. So put this out here, and that should actually be it. All right. Let's just, for the sake of completeness, copy this comment here as well, and then call this one B again. All right, perfect. Let's actually copy this one here as well to the development function, because right now, once we send back that error, we really have no way of then seeing the complete error. All right, so getting rid of this to make it more visible. And now that's beautiful. Okay, so let's actually quit it here now so that we can start our production application. So basically running it now in production. And we have a script for that, which is called npm run start production. Okay, so if we test this out now, then we should no longer see this string here. Remember? Because at this point, we do not have any error handling for an invalid tour name like this. Okay? But since we're in production and it is not an operational error, well, we do not want to see this. And so that's what we just coded up before. And so indeed, this is the more generic error message, right? But if we then put it back here in the views controller, so if we put this error handling back, then of course, since this here will now be an operational error, then we should of course get that error string, because it's always nice to show a friendly message to the user. But as you saw, that actually did not happen. So why is that? Well, we are in the production error. We are at the rendered website, and indeed we have an operational error. And so, we have this in place. And so indeed, it should work as we expected. Well, let's just try to log to the console the error.message just to see if we actually got it at this point. All right, reload this guy. And so there is the error. But still, that's very weird. So let's indeed log the entire error. Very strange, because for some reason the message is also not there. So let's run it again in development. So npm start. All right. And here for some reason it gets access to this message. So that means that in our views controller we actually set that message correctly. Run it in production again. So this is the kind of stuff that we don't like, right? So let's take a look at where our error in production is actually created. And that is here. So this error object that we're using here in production is a copy of this error, right? So the one that's coming into this middleware. And so let's actually take a look at both of them in the console. So error.message and then also error.message. So do that again. Okay. So we see that error, so the one that's coming right into our middleware function, does indeed have the message. But then the one that we copy, so error, for some reason does not. And so this trick that we're doing here, for some reason, does not copy the message with it. All right. And so let's do a quick fix of that. And let's say that error.message equals r.message. All right. And so that should then fix it, hopefully. All right. Here we go. Great. So now you see that they are indeed the same. And so that was the problem. All right. So without this, actually all the errors would not work correctly. So if we put this out here and tried to log in, for example, so admin at naders.io. So you see, we also get an undefined error here. All right. And so that's again because we're in production and our error object didn't correctly copy the message. I'm not sure why I didn't catch this one when we were actually implementing this, but maybe I didn't test it in a thorough enough way. Okay, and anyway, if we try this now we then get the correct error message that we're expecting. All right, great. So that's solved, and so that actually wraps up this video. So just in conclusion, we now have an error handling strategy that works for development, such as before, and also for production. And then in each of them, we basically have two branches. One sends the error message for the API, which is exactly what we had before. And then we also have now kind of a handler for the rendered website. And so in that case, we render out our error template. Then in production, we also distinguish between rendered website and API. And then just as before, inside of each of these branches, we then also distinguish between the operational errors and the unknown errors. So operational and unknown, and then inside rendered, also operational and unknown. And so for the rendered website, if we have an operational error, so a trusted one, then we send our trusted error message. But in case we do not trust the error, so when we do not know it, then we simply send this generic message back to the user. So, great. Let's quit that here and go back to development and wrap up this lecture. So see you in the next one.